Auschwitz concentration camp. Thesis. Due to Hitler's astute tactics in designing the largest concentration camp, Auschwitz, millions of people from a variety of cultures, races, etc., died due to the horrid experiments, gas chambers, death marches, death steps, and horrible environments they were forced to live in.
The Holocaust is one of the most horrific events in human history. This topic has many little pieces that build into one huge picture. We will be discussing the Auschwitz concentration camp. This concentration camp, or best described as a death camp, was established by Germans on May 20th, 1940 in the suburbs of Auschwitz, a Polish city that was annexed to the Third Reich by the Nazis. The first commandant was Rudolf Höss, who got Auschwitz up and running into a slaughter factory. As you enter the camp, a sign hangs above which reads, Arbeit macht frei. In English, it translates to, work sets you free.
Höss created 3 parts to this incredibly large camp. This included Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II Birkenau, and Auschwitz III Monowitz. Auschwitz I is the concentration camp for enemies of the Reich who were mainly political or national opponents of the Nazis. Auschwitz II Birkenau was the death camp, which existed primarily for killing Jews and Gypsies, as well as Soviet prisoners of war and later Poles. And finally, Auschwitz III Monowitz was the forced labor camp, which was also the site of the Buna synthetic rubber factory. Strong men were usually sent to this part of the camp due to the hard type of work needed. Auschwitz had the highest death rate, but also the highest survival rate of all the killing centers in Europe.
This camp was the largest out of all 42,000 camps, with electric barbed wire surrounding the entire area, making it nearly impossible to escape. With the amount of land Auschwitz took up, there were numerous buildings spread across the land. Prisoners inside were kept in horse sheds or buildings made out of old recycled materials such as brick, concrete, and wood. Inside there were rows of wooden bunks that did not include any mattresses. Not only did they have horrible sleeping materials, but they also had to share these small bunks with 5 to 6 other people. This led to illnesses which spread quickly, causing many deaths.
1.3 million people were held captive in Auschwitz, and 1.1 million died. Maximilian Kolbe was a Catholic priest who sacrificed his own life to save another's. Nazi soldiers were ordered to randomly choose 10 people to starve to death. This happened because they had too many people held in a shed. A young man with a wife and child was picked, and immediately Kolbe volunteered to take his spot. His request was accepted, and he and 9 others were taken to a rundown shack where they were left to die. Kolbe was described as kind, compassionate, considerate, soft, tender, caring, and had love without limits for many, including Germans. He turned the death cell into a spiritual church, giving others hope. Eventually, he passed, but he made his last few days joyful. Among the many victims in Auschwitz, 960,000 were Jews, 74,000 were Poles, 21,000 were Romans, 15,000 were Soviet prisoners of war, and at least 10,000 were other nationalities or handicapped. The numbers of people that I just read were all held captive in this one concentration camp. Medical experiments, including castration and sterilization, took place. Jews were mostly recognized as prisoners before arriving to these camps or ghettos, but most were not. 7,000 starving people were found after Auschwitz was shut down. More than 100,000 shoes were found, and a total of 13,970 pounds of hair was collected. Nazis started to evacuate the camp in the January of 1945. 60,000 people were forced to march around 30 miles to board trains to other camps. About 1/3 of the prisoners died during the expedition. There were around 7,000 Nazi soldiers that served at Auschwitz, and only a few were prosecuted. At the height of its power, Germany controlled most of continental Europe. The Nazis established 6 killing centers in occupied Poland. The largest was Auschwitz-Birkenau, located 37 miles west of Krakow, another concentration camp. A vast system of subcamps was also established in the region around Auschwitz, and the prisoners were forced to work in various factories and industries. In 1942, the Nazis began systematic deportations of Jews to Auschwitz. Trains arrived daily from nearly every corner of German-occupied Europe. The new arrivals underwent a selection in which the SS staff declared most of them unfit for forced labor and sent them immediately to the gas chambers. During 1943 and 1944, 4 large gas chambers and crematoriums operated on.
This topic is important in history because the Auschwitz concentration camp complex was the largest of its kind established by Nazis regime. Auschwitz had survivors. Auschwitz also had relatively successful underground escape with some incredibly brave young people who managed to actually get out and tried to spread the word of what was happening, and some even broke back in trying to help. Many were caught and publicly murdered in unusually creative ways as a warning to others. But there were survivors who saw it and reported it. They are the reason we know about the show at all. You may ask, so what? Well, these events that happened all together during the Holocaust affected everyone around the world, including the U.S. This is because our military went out to Germany to try and help fight for the people held hostage in death camps, concentration camps, ghettos, and people in hiding. Most also felt depressed about the news that millions of blameless people were killed for the most innocent reasons.
Today, everyone around the world are influenced by our topic of the Auschwitz concentration and death camp. We must not dwell on the past, but it is vitally important to inform our future so that in their turn they will stand up and not let such atrocities happen again. In conclusion, today you can visit the official Auschwitz camp in southern Poland, as it has turned into a memorial for the many innocent lives taken in those devastating years. This memorial contains original items of many prisoners such as clothing, personal items, and you also are able to walk through gas chambers and sheds where they slept. We will remember this time as a time of sadness and hope. Hope for a better future of our world, and sadness for the lives that were beat and taken.